It's the movie that inspired your childhood nightmare. So this is your disclaimer about any possible repressed memories that we unlock on today's episode of That Song from That Movie. It's nice to see you.
To see you nice?
Yay!
Did you want us to say it?
Thank you for joining That Song from That Movie, the journey through the very best and worst of movie songs. I am your scarred as a child host, Dietrich, and we're joined by the man who, like rabbits, always needs tricks, Alex.
Yep, definitely. I was given them by Frith.
Rabbit.
And we're also joined by the man who burns so pale, Ben.
My God, that's 100% true. That's the most accurate introduction I've had. I think I'm slowly burning through the double glazing windows that I've currently got. And I'm west facing.
He has absolutely nailed you there, Ben, to be fair.
It's absolutely done me.
Don't you?
So we cross over now to the man who's burning with the weather report.
I don't want to be known as this kind of person, honestly. I'm done. Yeah, it's decent. It's lovely. Back to you, Dietrich.
How are we all today?
Yeah, decent.
Good.
People have been watching films?
I watched the filmed version of Hamilton the other day. Enjoyed it.
Oh, right, yeah.
I haven't tried it yet. It's just so long.
You need to get on it, though. Yeah, but we watched it over 3 days.
Yeah.
I think we've watched it 3 times now.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, and we saw it at the stage show in February as well. So I'm puckered out. I am done. Alexander Hamilton, does that work?
Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, I am Alexander Hamilton. There's a million things I have done, and it's been watching Hamilton
Watching Hamilton over
a million times.
Does the film version of Hamilton compare to the stage version? I don't really know how it's been filmed.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, it's a filming of the live show.
Is it like a proper filming, or is it like that terrible 25th anniversary Les Mis where they just walk on stage with things happening in the background?
No, it's a proper filming. It's not like that. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have Nick. Was it Nick Jonas? It doesn't have Nick Jonas in it, unfortunately. Yeah, it's like a proper filming of a live performance on Broadway, I think.
Cool.
I must say the version, I just don't like Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice.
It's very nasally.
It's very nasally. The guy we saw was much better.
Yeah.
Would it be better with Nick Jonas?
What wouldn't be? The film we're talking today, that would be better with Nick Jonas.
Anything would be better.
Not anthropomorphized, just
in
it. Yeah.
Like Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh. There's Nick Jonas with the rabbits.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Just reacting.
Grounds the animated characters. Yeah, just live action as well. Like Brad Pitt in Cool World, or Michael Jordan in Space Jam.
Or Bob Hoskins in Who Framed
Roger Rabbit, yeah.
Today's episode is Bright Eyes by Art Garfunkel from the British animated movie Watership Down. So to find out what was happening in the world when this movie came out, we throw it over to you, Alex.
Yes. Thank you, Ben. So the year was 1978 and the month was October. So the first thing I found out about this month, I don't know if this is interesting news or not, but Australian Ken Warby set the current world water speed record of 317.6 miles per hour.
With assisted vehicle, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just ran. It was like Daniel Radcliffe in Swiss Army Man. Yeah, Ken Warby was being ridden by Paul Dano. The record is known as one of the most hazardous competitions, and 2 official attempts to beat the record have resulted in the death of the driver.
Oh, I think I might have heard of one of those, or watched a documentary about one of those deaths.
So it still actually is the record today, weirdly enough. So, interesting fact for you there.
Cheers.
Summer Nights by John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John from Greece was number 1 in the charts in the UK at the time. But the film had actually been released back in June, which shows like the lasting power of this musical.
Yeah, my God.
So like 3 or 4 months later, and it was still number 1. The British pop magazine Smash Hits was first published.
R.I.P.
Did anyone actually have those? It was like the Match magazine, the football magazine. Those like terrible. I think they'd started to sort of wean out by the time I was a kid.
There was a music channel as well, wasn't there? A Smash Hits music channel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, at one point, yeah, like somewhere wedged between like the box and Kiss FM or whatever.
The box, yeah.
Yeah, TMF, MTV, Scuzz, Kerrang, the classics.
Magic,
of course.
Country Hits Radio.
It's radio. That's probably still there somewhere. Can never die.
Country just keeps getting stronger.
Another interesting fact for you, Sid Vicious was charged with the murder of Nancy Spungen, which would later be depicted in the film Sid and Nancy, starring Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb. Have you seen that film?
I have not.
I have not.
I have. It's all right. That's what I say about it. I think it has like a lot of people sort of like it's got a bit of a cult following, but I don't remember it being great when I watched it. I don't think he was actually charged. Well, he was charged with the murder, but I don't think he was convicted. Died a few months later, maybe. Sid Vicious, this is not Gary Oldman. He would say he's still going strong. There was a couple of famous births in the October 1978. Two very different people. Usher.
Yeah.
Great.
And CM Punk, the wrestler.
Both iconic in their own way.
Both iconic in their own way.
Yeah, I think one slightly more than the other. You two still find a way to wean wrestling into
it
this
does
podcast.
come up a lot, doesn't it? But yeah. I feel like whenever I go on Wikipedia looking for births, it always mentions wrestlers.
It's big data. It's all like all of your sort of cookies on your computer are just bringing you up wrestling pop-ups.
You don't think it's the fact that wrestling fans are the most likely to try update stats in...
yeah, that's
probably,
true, actually,
yeah.
Yeah, the Wikipedia pages are probably like so dead on. Final bit of news. So a couple of films that were released in the same month that were possibly a bit more famous than Watership Down. Halloween.
Great film.
Yeah, and Midnight Express, which is actually kind of relevant to this week because director Alan Parker died a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw this.
No, I didn't.
But he also directed Bugsy Malone and Fame and Pink Floyd's The Wall, The Commitments, Evita, Mississippi Burning. So quite a track record of great films.
Yeah, that's quite a list.
Yeah,
isn't it? Going from like Midnight Express and Mississippi Burning to Fame.
Yeah, it's quite weird. I think Bugsy Malone was his first feature film. And then a couple of years later, he did Midnight Express, which was his second. Couldn't get more two different films. And then, like, I think there was a couple of musicals in a row: Fame, The Wall, and Evita. And then there isn't many more films. That's the weird thing. It's kind of these are the films. So most of the ones that he's directed, you've heard of.
Yeah.
And obviously, another film released in that year and that month was Watership Down. Do you want a bit of a synopsis of the film? I'm sure most people have seen it. Have you two seen it actually?
Yes.
Yeah. Get your opinion in a sec, but I'll read a quick synopsis. So Watership Down is a 1978 British animated adventure film based on the 1972 novel of the same name by Richard Adams. It's set in southern England. The story follows a group of anthropomorphized rabbits. I knew I was going to mess up that
word. Sleepless nights for Alex.
Yeah.
Anthropomorphized. He's just saying it in the window like Candyman.
I've got it sort of like in sections on the fridge.
Yeah.
So anthropomorphized rabbits who possess their own culture, language and mythology as they escape the destruction of their warren in search of a new home. So you have both seen it. What did you both think?
So I watched it recently, but I feel like I watched it as a child and didn't like it. As in didn't enjoy it in the sense that I was scared. However, I can't tell if that is actually a real memory or if I've heard so many people have this memory of, I was traumatized by this film as a kid. I had so many nightmares that I now think that happened to me.
Yeah, it's like one of those, what do they call it? It's like a syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it now.
It's like Nelson Mandela syndrome or something.
I don't know. It's like a cultural memory thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a false memory almost. But I watched it more recently, as in preparation for this, and I thought the film was rubbish. I really did not like it.
You thought it was rubbish?
Yeah, it just wasn't a good movie, and it was animated horribly. The sound was all off. It probably doesn't help that I'm currently in the midst of doing a run-through of all the Disney animated classics that have like these incredible animation quality to say it's like the 1950s. And then you move to this later on, and it looks like somebody drawing each cell. It wasn't aware what the previous cell looked like.
But do you think that adds an endearing quality to it?
No. Not at all.
That's the words of a mother really trying to love their son. It's okay. It's doing all right.
How about you, Ben? Was your opinion as scathing as Dietrich's?
No, but I do agree. I think the watercolor backgrounds are beautiful, but yes, some of the actual animation on the foreground is a bit jumpy. And like the dialogue is, because it's so British and it's so quipped, it's almost laughable. It's kind of how you mock British language now. But as for like its renown in film and film history, it's huge. Watching it again, I watched it last week. There is lots of things I find really interesting about it, and for someone who's not read the book, and I'm assuming you have, Alex.
No, I actually haven't.
Have you not? No.
No.
Yeah, I guess it's just that
Neither
this building of like a mythos.
Thanks for asking, Ben.
I guess I just assume Alex is the literary guy.
Cheers. I watched John Wick this week.
Sorry, yeah, well, I do associate you as the John Wick guy.
I've never even seen it before this week. Carry on.
So yeah, I like bits about it, but I think I like studying it than actually watching it.
Yeah. Based on the criticisms that you guys have, why do you think it has endured in the way that it has?
Because it is heavily layered. I mean, it's one of those films where it'll have sort of a deeper meaning and understanding of what's going on in the film and book. But I think, like Dee said, in culture, especially British culture, it is that film that traumatized kids.
Yeah, I think that's why it's endured.
Yeah. Should we think about that a bit, actually, because I've got a few notes on that. So, the film was rated a U in the UK, despite the fact that there is, like, a lot of gore, and in particular, a lot of blood. There's, like, rivers of blood, there's blood coming out of small, fluffy bunny rabbits. There's a snaring, which actually was used on the poster. Throats torn out.
Doesn't the seagull say "piss off" as well?
It does, yeah. At one point, yeah.
I mean, how do you miss that?
So, it's interesting. So, in 1978, there actually wasn't a PG or a 12 rating available.
Okay.
So the film had to either be a U or a 15, which kind of explains why it's a U, although maybe it should have been a 15.
I mean, yeah, I honestly think it would.
Yeah, it's interesting as well that it was given to you because the director, Michael Rosen, said he didn't make the film for kids.
No.
So I just mentioned before that the poster that was used to advertise the film features one of the rabbits being snared. I think it's Bigwig.
Yeah.
And he said it was an intentional choice to show to parents that the film, as he put it, wasn't for little Charlie.
The most common British name at the time.
But yeah, apparently, according to the BBFC, who are the board for rating films in this country, if it was released tomorrow, it would be a PG, but only a PG. And they also admitted that they've received complaints about the rating almost every year since it was classified.
Wow.
Unsurprising based on the content.
Nothing about it tells me it's for kids, other than the fact that it's drawn, it's animation.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
it.
But I suppose it is the rating. Like, you look at a U-rated film about rabbits living in the English countryside, You don't assume that there will be so much existentiality or, like, focus on morality or mortality.
Yes.
There's just so much of this going on that you wouldn't expect it. And I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple of years ago on Easter Sunday, Channel 5 showed it at 2:25. It got, like, a massive amount of complaints.
Yep.
Are we sure they weren't complaining that Home and Away wasn't on?
It was Easter Sunday, so maybe it wouldn't have been no way. If on a regular day, imagine. People just assumed that that's what the complaints were about all the death and blood, but it was actually so Home and Away, wasn't it? But even if the film was a PG, do you think that children should be exposed to films like this?
No, personally.
You don't?
I think there's films that touch upon those subjects in a lighter, more appropriate way.
Yeah.
That, and Disney's never sort of hidden away from that. There's often sort of quite traumatic origin stories for a lot of their protagonists.
Yeah.
All from the start, Bambi, Pinocchio, Dumbo, they're all very disturbing in elements, but they're still light enough around it that helps package it for kids so that you can still get that message that needs to be transferred. And like modern films, look at like Up, the emotional sort of starting of that.
Yeah.
It just balances it out right. And whereas I think Watership Down is unapologetically an adult film.
Yeah, it's although as I mentioned before, Rosen, the director, he's never said it was for kids. But when when everyone started going crazy about the film, so this is a quote. I remember talking to the censors in Sweden and saying, "Is there something about death you don't want children to know about? It's going to happen to us all."
Does he have kids? I mean, my gosh, that is a dark sort of twisted way of viewing.
Yeah. It is, isn't it?
Well, it's the same reason why children are given pets, to teach them morality.
Yeah, it's interesting how Disney do it and how Rosen, in this example, just did it the complete opposite way. Unabashedly just throwing death in the faces of children. We've talked about the film a bit, so we'll talk about the song, which was Bright Eyes, which was written by Mike Batt, who is also known for creating the Wombles pop act, and also discovering Katie Melua.
Wow.
And I put that's a fact, it's a thing we can't deny.
Brilliant.
After that.
Brilliant.
The song was performed by Art Garfunkel, and the single was released in January 1979, so it was actually released a few months later. And it featured on Garfunkel's album, which has possibly the greatest album name of all time, Fate for Breakfast.
Is it the one with a picture of his mug and receding afro?
I don't actually know what it looks like, but I'm guaranteed they will have his face with a receding afro on it. Yeah, definitely.
He needed to shave his head.
It's his signature look, though, Ben.
They were the one with him and Paul Simon, where Paul Simon's just tiny and he's just looming over him with this sort of like albino fro.
That's the Bridge Over Troubled Water album cover. Yeah. But yeah, it was the highest selling single in the UK of 1979.
Wow.
Before we sort of speak about where the song features in the film, do we have any sort of initial opinions about the song? Did you prefer it to the film, T?
Yeah, I guess I did. I do find it hard to uncouple the song from flashes of potentially fake childhood memories of rabbits being attacked and poorly drawn blood everywhere. But it is a beautifully sang song.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing. I don't know if it's like lyrically, and you might know this better than me, Alec, but the sort of the themes that quite couple close with the film when you talked about like morality, mortality, and things like this. That scene, just the feeling of the song, almost gets that across better for me on an emotional level. Like I feel that sort of more, and I feel more engrossed in the music of it, and like his sort of wistful voice. And like when I was watching it again just before we started on YouTube, and I'm looking through the comments, and there's a lot of condolences and messages for like lost loved ones, and it seems to be almost like tied to that.
So, song features in the scene where Fiver, who is the brother of Hazel, but he's led by a trippy vision of the Black Rabbit, who is supposed to be a leader to death to a wounded Hazel, who has been shot in the leg by a farmer. So, I think my first note on this actually was the scene itself. I think a lot of people, and I think certainly before I watched it last time, assumed that this song and this scene featured a moment where one of the main rabbits dies.
Yeah.
The song, it seems to be specifically about death. It seems like its tie is actually to death, when in the scene itself no rabbit dies because Hazel actually doesn't die. And it's interesting because Richard Adams hated the song, so Richard Adams is the original author of the novel. I think this happens a lot. No one's ever really gushing like, oh, I loved it, it's always I hated it, or yeah, it was okay. But Bat recalled, who is the producer of the song, recalled that Adams in an interview with Terry Wogan, who's coming up again, another mention for the Wogan, said the song was about death, which was wrong factually because Hazel is not dead. Bat's retort is that if Adams read his own book, and I put in brackets lol, if he read his own book, that this song is about a moment in which Fiver believes Hazel to be dead. But I think in the film, Fiver does say, I don't think he is dead, and follows the rabbit.
He does.
So it's all a bit of up in the air, like as to what what is going on with this. But Bat, he seems like a bit of a confrontational character himself, because he also fell out with both Art Garfunkel during the recording and the head of Columbia Records afterwards over the arrangement of the song. After the head of Columbia said he didn't like the string section, Bat said, that's alright, I'll go then. I'll take my song and you can get someone else to write a song. I walked out through the orchestra with my score in my hand and I drove off in my car. Given the fact that it is, like you guys have sort of mentioned, it's sort of a smallish British production, so it's weird how they got someone as big and famous as Art Garfunkel involved. But it seems as though he was just literally sent the song and he said it knocked him out. Not physically.
Oh, really?
I mean, Mike Bat might have tried to do that later on, but... So he was describing... This is funny. He said then that his tone has a quasi-religious pop element that he knew would add mystery and create goosebumps. Imagine describing your own voice as quasi-religious.
I think we found the new description for our podcast.
Quasi-religious.
Yeah, quasi-religious.
That's a quasi-religious pop element.
Somebody leave us a 5-star review saying that.
Yep.
Please.
When I was looking at the footage and stuff about Watership Down on YouTube, and mainly looking at whether I should buy the Criterion release, I saw an interview with Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
So he was saying how influential Watership Down was on him early in his life. Even though he's mostly known for obviously live action, he's quite into animation and a lot of sort of like monster character design and things like this, obviously, are wearing most of his films. I think he said he saw it first at the age of 13. And it kind of opened him up to an understanding that animation wasn't just for kids. And even though there was an awareness of there was other examples out there, that was the first that really sort of gripped him. And it's interesting because I was just trying to think of like adult animation has always been shunned. And often when you say adult animation, when you talk really early, talking 1970s, late 1960s, like Ralph Bakshi, have you heard?
No.
So you probably heard of some of it. I mean, he did a film called Fritz the Cat, which was quite very sort of famous, based on a comic strip, which was very sort of adult orientated. He also directed the Lord of the Rings animated film.
Yeah, well, that was one of the ones that this kind of reminds me of.
It's a very similar style.
Yeah,
that was when he kind of went a bit more relaxed. He said he didn't want to spend his life in a room of adult men drawing butterflies. he said like animation could have another way of transmitting a story. But I feel like Watership Down almost sits in the middle of that. Some of the films that he did early on were very sort of, okay, this is obviously an adult film. It's talking about sex, drugs, race, all these sort of like very risky sort of conversations. Whereas Watership Down and maybe films like Animal Farm, they're not adult necessarily in their content is graphic, just kind of a lot more layered than animated films are usually.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like a lot of Disney films seem to be, there's often this thing of like, oh, it's great for the whole family. Kids enjoy it for the characters, the colours, and there's a deeper message that adults grasp and, kids might not get until they're...
Or sassy asides.
Yes. Does Watership Down kind of sit in that middle?
I think it just really isn't for kids, is it? There's nothing really there for them, I don't think, except for maybe there's like the idea that there's rabbits running around in fields and stuff.
Yeah, all the pretty rabbits.
I think with a lot of films, like kids don't really understand the jokes that are in there, but they sort of understand the rhythm of the dialogue. Like there's a way that it's written that sort of allows them in on a joke that they don't really understand, so they can still enjoy it. Whereas there's 100%. Nothing like that with this film. There's no real humor except for the pet. I can't remember what his name is, K-Ra or something. The bird. He's the comic relief in the film. But other than that, there isn't really any, is there? It's just a very serious film, and I think that's why it's not for kids. You could argue that the themes are universal, like things like death, but they don't do it in a way that a child would enjoy or can really understand. It's like it's very blunt, isn't it? Which in some ways is its greatest quality.
That's really interesting, though. I think when you talked about the accessible dialogue for sort of heavier motifs and themes, that's probably a lot more common in Disney films.
Yeah,
and the John Hurt, his voice doesn't exactly lend to the ears of a 7-year-old. It's been a long time since I've seen Animal Farm.
Yeah, I caught half of that not long ago, actually, during lockdown, like near towards the beginning, during lockdown. I don't think it's as good as Watership Down, but I don't think the story of Animal Farm is as good personally. It's not as... But I find that with a lot of George Orwell stuff, I think because it's an allegory, it's kind of... It's more focused on that than actually creating something that's really engaging to watch or to read as a narrative. I think in terms of its message, it does have important things to say, but and it's not as gruesome as Watership Down. There's not as much blood. There's not as much violence. There are animals that die within it, but it's not as cruel in a way as the world of Watership Down.
No,
definitely not.
Also, the front cover of the DVD, because I've got it, looks a lot more like a U-rated film. Whereas, like you said, Watership Down, it's not. It's a rabbit in a snare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hiding it.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't think that Animal Farm is hiding it necessarily, but I just think that it's... The point of the subject matter is that it's hidden, whereas, with Watership Down, it's not. The book, I think, is the same. I haven't read it, but I have read about it. I think the film is quite a fair portrayal of how the book is as well. I think that's maybe the difference. It's not trying in any way to be a children's film, and that's what the director, Rosen, said. He never intended it to be that way. And so he wouldn't do what Disney do and sort of try and mask it or try and dress it up in a comical way. He just didn't think it was necessary. But I think it was his first ever film that he was involved in. He ended up sort of directing it by chance. He originally got someone who was quite big in animation at the time, but I can't remember the name.
Walt Disney
originally to sort of direct the drawing and the animation. But he eventually took over because the other guy quit midway through.
Really?
So, I think that maybe explains why it's a bit jumpy-y and why maybe bits aren't quite clean enough for a normal audience. So I think, that maybe explains that way.
I swear I read somewhere, though, that Adam said that it was originally, as in the book, like he'd read it to his kids.
I think it was a story while he was driving them to school or taking them to school. He sort of came up with this little idea and they wanted him to come up with a story, and this is what he came up with. Maybe the book, I've not read it, but maybe it is a bit more child-friendly. I don't think I think it's probably more like young adult age, like teenage.
Yes.
But, I mean, the other film in terms of anime, you mentioned The Lord of the Rings one. The other one it reminds me of is that Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe cartoon. Have you guys seen that?
I don't know if I've seen... No, I don't think I have.
Which is also quite brutal in some instances, which you wouldn't expect if you've seen the newer film version, like the Tilda Swinton and Liam Neeson film version. There's like a really horrific scene where Aslan sacrifices himself.
Yes.
as a la Jesus. But in the cartoon, it's horrible. Like they're like lashing him with ropes and tying him down to this table. It's like it does remind me a lot of that actually. I did notice that the film was like entered in a couple of lists. Total film then Watership Down, the 47th greatest British film of all time. D, you probably wouldn't agree with that based on your assessment earlier.
No, but that's not to say that I have 46 more that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, do it now, Dietrich.
Name them.
Okay, right, we got Thunderpants.
Every film starring Rupert.
The In-Betweeners 2.
Are you trying to think of the worst British films to emphasise your point?
Well, In-Betweeners 2 isn't that the most successful British film of all time? Comedy of all time.
You might be right,
really?
actually. I think I do remember that, hearing that. It was also on, I don't know where this list is, parenthesised 100 greatest tearjerkers, and it was ranked number 15. Do you think it's a tearjerker? I can see why maybe people would think that, not really having watched it recently.
I could get emotional listening to Bright Eyes. And like some sort of Fantasia-esque sort of scene, because of how like it's kind of just like the mythology element of it kind of just taking over. There's no particular dialogue, it's just the song. And it's just kind of colours and the shapes of rabbits running around.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it too much earlier, did we? But yeah, it's very trippy.
It's very trippy. But I find that quite emotional, I don't know why.
Yeah, I think it's sort of... There's a really good bit where Fiver, who's looking for Hazel, is like stood underneath the electrical pylon. And it's kind of like waving. I think actually in terms of the animation, I know you've criticised it, D, and there are definitely points where it deserves criticism. But I think this section is probably the strongest part of the film, maybe because it is just so abstract.
I think because it's not foreground, background animation. Like usually in like old animation, they'd have like 4 or 5 set blocks where you'd animate and move them. Yeah. Whereas I think the montage is just one. Whereas often it's the rabbits that look dodgily animated and the background watercolour looks beautiful.
Yeah, and I think probably maybe because of that reason this is the strongest bit. And it might be because of the song as well, and it's the part that everybody remembers. It does get your emotions up a little bit. But Ben, you've compiled a list as well, have you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the most important list, of course.
Ben's list of the week.
Yes, so this is a new feature because I love lists.
Do you want background music for this segment?
I'm gonna. Yes, we need to find music.
I don't know what the music's going to be, but it's going to start now. There you go.
Thank you, music. So, you've covered a lot of interesting points there, Alex. You've given us a lot of insight, details, knowledge. We're all thankful for it, and I know the listeners are as well. But there's one thing you've not covered, and yes, I hear that in the audience. He has not covered it. So, in the film, we've got these anthropomorphised rabbits. We've got Fiver, Hazel, Bigwig, General Woundwort. But I ask you guys, are these the most famous cinematic rabbits? So here is the top 5.
Oh, can we get?
I think. No, you get guesses. Yeah,
we get guesses.
You get guesses. I've also got narrow missed out. Who's going first?
Ooh. Does a bunny count as a rabbit? Is there a?
I'll let you. Yeah, there's a definite sort of arbitrary connection to some of these. So
okay, I've got a guess.
Go.
Eminem in 8 Mile.
B-Rabbit.
It should be in there. B-Rabbit. It should be in there. The list is pointless now. It's failed already.
I love that.
It's not on there, but that's brilliant.
I mean, I think the obvious one is probably Roger Rabbit.
Roger Rabbit at number 2.
Yeah. Bugs Bunny or Lola Bunny.
I'd say Bugs Bunny's more of a. I think of him as more of a cartoon rather than a film.
Okay, right. I was thinking maybe what's the name of the rabbit from Donnie Darko? What's his name? Frank.
Frank is in there at number 5.
The other one that's really in my mind, which is similar to Frank, is the one from the second Bill and Ted film. Do you remember it's like a blue rabbit in like Bill's Nightmare. This isn't on the list, is it?
How can you tell?
The rabbit from Alice in Wonderland?
The March Hare.
The white rabbit. Oh, well, there's 2.
Just missed out. The white rabbit as well. Just missed out. Not a fan of that.
Are any of them just like actual rabbits?
What do you mean, just the rabbit? No, I did have an honourable mention for the rabbit from Fatal Attraction.
I don't know that one.
It's the one that gets cooked because it spawned the turtle.
Oh, Bunny Boiler, of course, yeah.
So you've got Frank and you've got Roger.
Yeah, God.
So you've got 2 animated rabbits in here, and then 1 imaginary rabbit.
The one from the film Hop.
It's definitely not. You get kicked from the podcast for even mentioning that film. That's an offence to this lupine list.
Oh, a Thumper. Yeah, come on.
Thumper, number one. I put Thumper at number one. Classic.
I think you're going to need to give us the other ones.
Yeah.
So the other one, I've got Judy Hopps from the film Zootropolis.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
Zootopia, depending on wherever you're from. Number 3, I have the rabbit from the Holy Grail.
Oh, of course. How do we not get that out to last episode? Yeah.
So we've got number 1, Thumper. Number 2, Roger Rabbit. Number 3, Judy Hopps. Number 4, the rabbit from Holy Grail. I think it's got some sort of weird name. And number 5, Frank.
It's like
Honourable
Beast of
mentions.
something, isn't it?
The only other honourable mention that you've not mentioned is Harvey, the imaginary rabbit from the film Harvey, starring Jimmy Stewart, which I think is inspiration for Frank, from Donnie Darko. And that's my list.
It's pretty good.
That's how you bring the level down for this podcast.
I like the lists.
Background music ends now.
Thank you,
There you
music.
Okay, so now it's time for the ultimate question. Movie or song, Alex?
Oh no, I wasn't expecting you to throw it to me first.
Really?
Ooh.
Okay, Ben.
I mean, it's difficult. I think, as much as I probably prefer the song, just how it stands in relation to film history, I think it has to stay. Can't just get rid of all the trauma in our lives.
Can watch Return to Oz instead.
I don't think I've ever seen Return to Oz.
What? You
I don't
need
think
to
I've
see
ever seen Return to Oz.
Return to Oz, Ben. It is literally the weirdest film of all time, but in a great way.
It's on Disney Plus.
But yeah, I just think the film needs to continue on. It has a greater role than just what's going on in the film. Animation can have adult themes. The controversy, I think films with controversy is always interesting and acts as an understanding of where social politics was at the time. And I think films that had a role in that should stay.
All very eloquent points you've made there, Ben. But I'm voting for the song.
Simple as that. I am actually going to go with Ben and choose film. Sorry, Dee. I do think the scene with the song is probably almost the film's greatest achievement in a way, in terms of how it hits on an emotional level. I just think for everything that the film represents in terms of... Basically, I mean, I can't really say it any better than how Ben said it. And I think actually it's probably the best way to depict this story as well, is through the medium that they used. And I don't know, I don't really know what else to say, but I just think the film needs to stick around.
So Art Garfunkel goes in the bin.
Yeah, by Art.
I always preferred Paul.
Well, it means as well that Paul Simon's cameo in Annie Hall doesn't have to disappear, and it shouldn't ever be stricken from the record because it's hilarious.
So with that ding, we come to the end of another episode of That Song from That Movie. Why not post this in the Simon and Garfunkel subreddit? They'll love it.
Is there an actual... I just come to accept there's a subreddit for everything.
Or maybe even the Murdered Rabbit subreddit. I'm sure they'll love this.
Yep. Or
Probably they're like Bayes Tapestry.
Yeah. Or the quasi-religious media subreddit.
So you can follow us on Twitter. The Twitter handle is Alex.
Oh, TSFTM pod?
How is it so slow once you were at the end? I get why it's slow at the start.
I was thinking it was
but you can't go TSFTM.
I got lost midway through.
You don't have bright eyes today, Alex.
No.
So all I'll do now is do some goodbyes. So it's goodbye from me, goodbye, and goodbye from Alex.
I'm about to go have a breakfast of a full English of fate, destiny and providence with a side of predestination on toast.
Delicious.
Classic Sunday for Alex, yeah.
Yep.
And goodbye from Ben.
Goodbye, dear, you crack-brained slave driver.
It's all true. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Trying to stretch that out.
It's nice to see you.
To see you nice? Did you want us to say it?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I thought he says to see you, and then we say nice.
No, we say to see you nice, don't we?
Oh, really?
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
No, I thought it's nice to see you, and then everyone went nice.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Honestly, I'm watching. One sec, I'm watching.
Okay, we'll try a different one if you want.
No. I'm watching.
It's nice to see you nice.
Yes, I was right.
Oh. Do it again, then.
It's nice to see you, and then we say nice.
I think you've already got the end of the episode monologue, do you?